empty in both directions. Heat waves dancing off the blacktop like ghosts. Her phone had no signal. The spare tire lay flat against the gravel shoulder, as useless as her morning had become. She'd been fighting this battle for 20 minutes when the sound of boots on gravel made her look up. A figure approached from the direction of town, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the measured stride of someone accustomed to command. Navy dress blues caught the afternoon sun, ribbons and insignia sharp against the pristine fabric. A SEAL, she realized, noting the trident gleaming on his chest. He stopped 6 feet away. Their eyes met across the distance, and something shifted in his expression, recognition, or something deeper. Without warning, his right hand snapped to his forehead in a crisp military salute. The gesture hung in the desert air like a question mark. Then he took a deliberate step backward. Emma stared, her wrench forgotten in her grip. SEALs didn't salute civilians. Everyone knew that, yet here he stood, maintaining perfect military bearing while she crouched beside a broken-down Honda, in clothes that smelled of yesterday's diner shift. 3 months ago, she'd been invisible. Another face in the crowd at Rosie's all-night diner, refilling coffee cups and dodging wandering hands for tips that barely covered rent. Her apartment was a studio above the laundromat, where Mrs. Chen counted quarters and dispensed advice in broken English. Emma's world measured 6 blocks in any direction. Work, grocery store, home, repeat. She'd learned early that keeping your head down was survival. After Mom died, the bills didn't stop coming. The nursing home debt, the medical collections, the student loans for a degree she never finished. They multiplied like cancer cells. Emma worked doubles, picked up weekend shifts, lived on ramen and stubbornness. Nobody noticed when she missed family gatherings. Nobody asked why she drove a car held together with prayer and electrical tape. She was 26 and already tired, worn thin by circumstances that felt heavier than her shoulders could bear. The only luxury she allowed herself was the small frame on her nightstand. Her father in dress uniform, young and serious, standing beside a flag she'd folded 100 times, but never fully understood. The medals came in a shoebox after the funeral. Bronze stars, ribbons with names like Combat Action and Presidential Unit Citation. Emma had run her fingers over the cold metal, wondering what stories they held. Her father never spoke of the service, never shared the details that carved lines around his eyes, or made him wake gasping in the middle of the night. "Some things are better left buried, Mija," he'd said once, when she'd pressed him about a newspaper clipping she'd found. The headline mentioned something about a rescue operation in Afghanistan, a small unit that had pulled 18 hostages from a compound behind enemy lines. His name was there, buried in the text like an afterthought. She'd found letters too, written in careful script from men with names like Rodriguez and Thompson and Jackson. They called him Sergeant, thanked him for things they couldn't specify. One envelope, never opened, bore the return address of Naval Special Warfare Command. Emma had held it to the light, but the contents remained a mystery her father took to his grave. Sometimes she caught herself wondering if the man in the uniform was the same person who'd taught her to change oil and check tire pressure. The father who'd made pancakes on Sunday mornings seemed too gentle to carry whatever weight those medals represented. Back on Highway 92, the SEAL hadn't moved. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her skin prickle. There was evaluation in his gaze, the kind of assessment that saw past surface details to something deeper. Emma felt exposed, as if he could read chapters of her life she'd never written down. A pickup truck slowed as it passed, the driver craning his neck to stare. In the distance, She could see Mrs. Patterson from the hardware store standing outside her shop, shading her eyes with one hand. Word would spread. In a town of 3,000, a Navy SEAL saluting someone was headline news. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Emma's hands trembled as she set down the wrench and slowly stood. The SEAL's posture never wavered, respectful, reverent almost, as if she were a superior officer instead of a woman with motor oil under her fingernails. "I don't understand," she whispered, but he remained motionless, waiting for something she couldn't name. By Tuesday, the whispers had started. Jenny from the diner cornered her during the lunch rush, eyes bright with curiosity. "So what's the story with the military guy? My cousin saw you two on 92. Said it looked pretty intense." Emma deflected with a shrug. But the questions followed. Her home. Mrs. Chen asked in her careful English if Emma had soldier family. The mailman, usually content with small talk about the weather, wanted to know if she'd ever served overseas. "They don't do that for just anyone," said Tom Rivera, sliding onto his usual stool at the counter. He'd done 2 tours in Iraq, carried shrapnel in his left shoulder that ached before thunderstorms. SEALs especially. That salute, it means something. The words lodged in Emma's chest, like splinters. She'd always assumed her father's service was ordinary, the kind of duty millions of Americans had performed without fanfare. But Tom's expression suggested otherwise, a recognition that made her stomach twist with questions she couldn't voice. At home that night, she pulled out the shoebox again. The medals felt heavier somehow, their ribbons more significant. She studied each one, cross-referencing them online until her eyes burned. The Bronze Star was for heroic achievement in combat. The Silver Star, she'd missed it before, tucked beneath a folded citation, was for gallantry in action against an enemy. Her father hadn't been ordinary at all. The note appeared Thursday morning, slipped under her apartment door sometime before dawn. Her name was written on the outside in block letters. Precise, military script. Inside, a single line. "Rosie's Diner, 6 p.m., back booth." Emma's hands shook as she read it twice, 3 times. No signature, but she knew. She arrived early, claimed the booth by the window, where she could watch the parking lot. At exactly 6 o'clock, the SEAL walked through the door. Out of uniform now, wearing jeans and a simple grey t-shirt, he looked younger, maybe 35, with crow's feet that suggested years of squinting into hostile sun. He slid into the yard, seat across from her without invitation. Up close, she could see a thin scar running from his left ear to his jawline, the kind of mark that spoke of close calls and hard choices. "Your father saved my life," he said, without preamble. His voice carried a slight southern accent, weathered by years of shouted orders and controlled breathing. "Afghanistan, 2003. I was a boot then, barely 6 months in country." Emma's coffee grew cold between her hands. He never talked about it. Men like Sergeant Martinez don't. The SEAL's eyes never left hers. "We were pinned down in a compound. Outside Kandahar, Taliban had us surrounded. Ammunition running low. Your father volunteered for a solo extraction run. Basically suicide, but it was our only shot." The diner's ambient noise faded to white static. Emma felt the world narrowing to this booth, this moment, this truth she'd never known existed. "He didn't just save me," the SEAL continued. "My whole squad, 17 operators who went home to their families because Eduardo Martinez decided our lives were worth more than his own safety." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "The salute wasn't just for you, Miss Martinez. It was for him, and for the debt I can never repay." Emma's vision blurred. "Why now?" "It's been 3 years since." Because I've been looking for you. The admission hung between them, like a confession. Your father made us promise to watch out for his family if anything ever happened to him. Took me this long to track you down. The words rewrote her understanding of everything. Her father's silence, the weight in his eyes, the careful distance he'd maintained from his own medals. He'd carried secrets that weren't his to share, protected truths that could have made her proud but might have put her in danger. There are others, the SEAL said quietly. Men who owe their lives to Eduardo Martinez. We've been scattered across the world, but we remember, we always remember. Highway 92 looked different in the afternoon light as Emma pulled her car, now sporting a proper spare tire, onto the shoulder where everything had started. The SEAL stood waiting, back in dress uniform, the desert wind tugging at his ribbons. This time, she understood the weight of his salute. It wasn't ceremony or mistake. It was recognition of a legacy she'd inherited without knowing its value. When his hand snapped to his forehead, she saw her father in the gesture, saw 18 years of wondering, finally answered. The step backward came again, but now she recognized it for what it was. Not retreat, but the space afforded to those who've earned respect through blood and sacrifice. He wasn't stepping away from weakness. He was making room for strength she'd carried all along. Emma drove toward town with her father's medals in the passenger seat, finally understanding that some inheritances can't be measured in dollars or possessions. Behind her, the SEAL watched until her taillights disappeared around the curve, then walked back toward his own vehicle, a black SUV with government plates that had been parked. His phone buzzed with a text from an unlisted number. Package delivered. He typed back. She knows now. The response came immediately. Good. Martinez would be proud. As Emma's car disappeared into the distance, carrying Eduardo Martinez's daughter toward a future she couldn't yet imagine, the desert wind scattered dust across the empty highway, where a salute had changed everything. To be continue, if you next, part comment Army.